Hello everybody, welcome to another Monday stream. I apologize in advance for the noises you're going to be hearing in the background. I started the dishwasher later than usual and my AC is going to be coming on periodically and it is very, very loud. I don't know why it's that loud, it's just that's how it's always been for the 4 years I have lived here. So, with that out of the way, I had to break the tie with a coin flip this week, and the coin has landed on John Buscema. I hope, is it Buscema or Buscemi? I'm just gonna go with Buscema until we get to the interviews, and then hopefully one of them will pronounce it correctly. Alright, so without further ado, we're going to get started with the Wikipedia, like normal. And, oh dear. Oh boy, looks like it's going to be another really big one. It's just like the Mobius one a few weeks ago, where it's just like, it's not even just a Wikipedia page, it's a whole ass bibliography. Alright, so born Giovanni Natal Buscema. Oh, I wonder why he changed his name. Was an American comic book artist and one of the mainstays of Marvel Comics during its 1960s and 1970s ascendancy into an industry leader and its subsequent expansion to a major pop culture conglomerate. His younger brother, Sal Buscema, is also a comic book artist. Oh, really? Worked on The Incredible Hulk and Spectacular Spider-Man. Oh! And nice. Maybe I'll put him on one of the lists sometime. Alright. Buscema is best known for his run on the series The Avengers and the Silver Surfer, and for over 200 stories featuring the sword and sorcery hero Conan the Barbarian. Yeah, I really don't know why it has taken me so long to cover this guy, because it's like he's one of the most iconic Conan artists. So I have no idea how I've just not gotten to him. But we're here today. In addition, he penciled at least one issue of nearly every major Marvel title, including long runs on 2 of the company's top magazines, Fantastic Four and Thor. I have seen his Thor work before. He was inducted into the Will Eisner Comic Book Hall of Fame in 2002, and in October 2024, Buscema was inducted into the Harvey Awards Hall of Fame. Alright, and he was born December 11th, 1927. Oh, dang. And died January 10th, 2002 at the age of 74. Alright, early life. Alright, born in Brooklyn, New York City, from Sicilian parents who immigrated from Pozzallo, Ragusa. John Buscema showed an interest in drawing at an early age. Okay, I'm gonna play one of the videos really, really quick just so I can get his name pronunciation correct. Let's see. This is the comics historian.
You're free.
Okay.
When did you start drawing?
As soon as I was able to hold a pencil in my hand.
Okay, maybe that one.
Today we will take a journey through art and mastery of John Buscema, a man who...
Okay, Buscema. Alright. Because I unintentionally mispronounced George Perez's name the entire stream. Alright, Buscema. Alright, Buscema. Alright. Because those pronunciation things that were at the top of the page did not help me whatsoever. Those things rarely ever help me. Alright, showed interest in drawing at an early age, copying comic strips such as Popeye. In his teens, he developed an interest in both superhero comic books and such adventure comic strips as Hal Foster's Tarzan and Prince Valiant. Oh yeah, he did do some Tarzan art. Björn Hofgart's Tarzan, Alex Raymond's Flash Gordon, and Milton Caniff's Terry and the Pirates. He showed an interest in commercial illustration of the period by such artists as N.C. Weymouth, Norman Rockwell, Dean Cornwell, Gobi Whitmore, Albert Dorn, and Robert Fawcett. Wow, we have quite a few different artists for a potential future stream. Alright, Buscema graduated from Manhattan's High School of Music and Art. He took night lessons at Pratt Institute as well as life drawing classes at the Brooklyn Museum. While training as a boxer, he began painting portraits of boxers and sold some cartoons to the Hobo News. What? What the hell kind of name is the Hobo News? Okay, early 20th century newspaper for homeless migrant workers. So, basically it was just super cheap newspaper for hobos to buy. Okay, hobos do need to learn about current events too. Seeking work as a commercial illustrator while doing various odd jobs, Buscema found himself instead entering the comic book field in 1948, landing a staff job under editor-in-chief and art director Stan Lee at Timely Comics, the forerunner of Marvel Comics. The Timely Bullpen, as the staff were called, included such fellow staffers as established veterans Sid Shores, Carl Burgos, Mike Sowinski, George Klein, and Marty Nudell. Fellow newcomer Gene Colin, hired roughly 2 months earlier, recalled that John never seemed very happy in comics. There always seemed to be something else he really wanted to do. Oh, that's sad. That's very sad. Maybe he changes his mind later in life. And his first recorded credit is penciling the 4-page story Till Crime Do You Part in Timely's Lawbreakers Always Lose number 3. He contributed to the real-life dramatic series True Adventures and Man Comics, the premier issue of which supported one of Buscema's earliest recorded comic book covers, as well as to cowboy romances, two-gun westerns, for which he drew at least one story of the continuing character, the Apache Kid, Lorna the Jungle Queen, and Strange Tales. Until the bullpen was dissolved a year and a half later, as comic books in general and superhero comics in particular continued their post-war fade into popularity, Buscema penciled and inked in a variety of genres, including crime fiction and romance fiction. In the 1950s. Buscema married in 1953 and continued to freelance for Timely, by now known as Atlas Comics, as well as for the publishers Ace Comics, Hillman Periodicals, Our Publications / Orbit Wanted, Quality Comics, St. John Publications, and Ziff Davis. Wow, he was a very busy man. At least back then he got a lot of good freelance work. Because that seems to be a big struggle with a lot of artists, just getting a constant stream of freelance work. Buscema's mid-1950s works included Dell Comics' Roy Rogers comics from number 74 to 91, and subsequent Roy Rogers and Trigger from number 92 to 97, and from 104 to 108. And the Charlton Comics series Raymar of the Jungle and Nature Boy, the latter Buscema's first superhero work, with a character created by himself and Superman co-creator Jerry Siegel. Oh, nice! Buscema next produced a series of Western, War, and Sword and Sandal. What the hell is Sword and Sandal? As Peplum is a subgenre, Italian-made historical mythology, or oh, okay. So they're like Bible or mythological adventure stories. So it's like sword and sorcery, but it's more in the context of mythology and biblical stories. Okay, I did not know that that name existed. Film adaptations for Dell's four-color series. Buscema recalled, I did a bunch of their movie books. It was a lot of fun. I worked from stills on those, except for the Vikings. I think one of the best books I ever did was Sinbad the Sailor. He drew at least one issue of the radio, film, and TV character, the Cisco Kid, for Dell in 1957, as well as 1 to 8-page biographies of every U.S. president through Dwight Eisenhower for that company's one-shot Life Stories of American Presidents. Neat. During the late 1950s downturn in the comics industry, oh yeah, that's right, CCA, Buscema occasionally drew occasional mystery, fantasy, and science fiction stories for Atlas Comics, Tales to Astonish, Tales of Suspense, and Strange Worlds, and American Comics Group's Adventures into the Unknown and Forbidden Worlds, before leaving comics to do freelance commercial art. He began a freelance position for the New York City advertising firm, the Chait Agency, which employed such commercial artists as Bob Peake and Frank McCarthy. Oh no, it's the McCarthys! Alright. Buscema spent approximately 8 years in the commercial art field, freelancing for Chait Agency and the Studio Triad, doing a variety of assignments, layouts, storyboards, illustrations, paperback book covers, etc. in a variety of media. Buscema called this time quite a learning period for me in my own development of techniques. Yeah, I would imagine. Those are vastly different types of media that require vastly different, or they have vastly different kind of needs as far as art goes. So I can imagine that it was a big learning experience for him. He returned to comic books in 1966 as a regular freelance penciler for Marvel Comics, debuting over Jack Kirby's layouts on the Nick Fury Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. story in Strange Tales, number 150. Okay. Followed by 3 Hulk stories in Tales to Astonish, number 85 to 87. He then settled in as a regular penciler of The Avengers, which would become one of his signature series, with number 41. With number 41, Avengers 49 to 50 included Hercules and inked by Buscema, are 2 of his best-looking issues of that period, said comics historian and one-time Marvel editor-in-chief Roy Thomas, who wrote those issues. Thomas and Buscema introduced their versions of the Black Knight and the Vision during their collaboration on the Avengers. Okay. In order to adapt to the Marvel Comics style of superhero adventure, Buscema synthesized the essence of Jack Kirby's supercharged action figures, harrowing perspectives, monolithic structures, megaforce explosions, and mythological planetscapes into a formula that he instantly integrated into his own superbly crafted vision, wrote comics artist and historian Jim Stranko. Oh, so he basically just read the room and is like, you know what, I'm going to just attempt to do what that guy's doing over there and see how that works for me. I mean, Kirby's not the bad source to look to for figuring out what he's supposed to be doing there, but I just find it funny that he's like, yeah, I'm just gonna do what that guy's doing. Alright, the process brought Buscema's art to life in a way that it had never been before. Anatomically balanced figures of Herculean proportions stalked, stormed, and sprawled, and savaged their ways across Marvel's universe like none had previously. Buscema would pencil an average of 2 comics a month. That's quite impressive. In collaboration with such inkers as George Klein, Frank Giacolia, Dan Atkins, Joe Sinnott, his younger brother Sal Buscema, Tom Palmer, and occasionally Marvel production manager and sometimes inker cartoonist John Verporten. John Buscema named Frank Giacoa, Sal Buscema, and Tom Poller as his favorite inkers. It's so weird to think that you would have like a favorite inker, but then again, the relationship between penciler and inker is a, I don't want to say a special one, but it's one where you guys have to really be on the same page, because I have seen where the inker was just completely off the mark with what the penciler was trying to go for. There's a video around here somewhere about one of the inkers for Jack Kirby who absolutely did not do Jack Kirby style any justice whatsoever. Alright. Among Buscema's work during this period, fans and historians call the Silver Age of comic books are Avengers number 41 to 62 and the Avengers Annual number 2, the first 8 issues of The Submariner, The Amazing Spider-Man 72, 73, 76, 81, 84, 85, ranging from 69 to 70, and 2 issues he himself finished over Romita's layouts. Buscema drew the first appearance of the Prowler in The Amazing Spider-Man number 78. In August 1968, Buscema and Stan Lee launched a new title, The Silver Surfer. That series, about a philosophical alien roaming the world trying to understand both the divinity and the savagery of humanity, was a personal favorite of Marvel editor-in-chief Stan Lee, who scripted. I think Stan Lee does have like Stan Lee did have a special little spot in his heart for the Silver Surfer, because he did that little Silver Surfer miniseries, and he seemed to be very excited to be working with Mobius on that. If you haven't seen that stream, basically Mobius was like, yeah, he asked me if I wanted to help illustrate with that book for the Silver Surfer, and the next thing I knew, there was a description of what the story was going to be on my desk. Like, he did not waste any time. So it does seem like he had a special little soft spot for the Silver Surfer in particular. Buscema penciled 17 of its 18 issues, the first 7 as a 25-cent giant-sized title at the time when comics typically cost 12 cents. The days when a comic book cost 12 cents. Beautifully drawn by John Buscema, this comic book represented an attempt to upgrade the medium with a serious character of whom Lee had grown very fond. Assessed comic book historian Les Daniels. There's a lot of quotes from comics historians in this one. Like, a lot of quotes. I wonder who wrote this Wikipedia page. Roy Thomas said Buscema considered Silver Surfer number 4, featuring the battle between the Silver Surfer and Thor, as the high point of his Marvel's work. And we got that picture there. Did he do the cover of that? Yep, he did the cover for it. It's a high point of his Marvel work. Characters Buscema co-created in The Silver Surfer included the long-running archdemon Mephisto. Oh, he co-created Mephisto? Nice. Alright, towards the end of the decade, Buscema drew some fill-in issues of superhero series and returned to familiar 1950s genres with a splat of supernatural mystery stories in Chambers of Darkness and Tower of Shadows, and romance tales in My Love and Our Love. He then returned to his signature series, The Avengers, for 11 issues, inked by Tom Palmer. Okay. So now we get into the 70s. The creative team of Roy Thomas and John Buscema introduced new characters such as Akron in The Avengers number 75, Red Wolf in number 80, and the Squadron Supreme in number 85. Oh, he introduced the Squadron Supreme. I had that trade a long ass time ago, but I've never gotten to reading it because I was a dumbass. With Jack Kirby's departure from Marvel in 1970, Buscema succeeded him on both of Kirby's titles, Fantastic Four, penciling issues 107 to 141, following John Romita Sr., and Thor from 182 to 259. He additionally launched the feature Black Widow in Amazing Features Volume 2, Number 1. Alright, Marvel editor-in-chief Stan Lee, who collaborated with Buscema on many stories up to this time, wrote, "One thing I loved about Big John..." My gosh, Stan. One thing I loved about Big John is the fact that I didn't have to spend time writing synopses for him. He'd always growl over the phone, "Don't bother sending me any outlines, Stan. I hate to waste time reading them." Just tell me what you've got in your mind over the phone, and I'll remember it. Oh, he was not one to beat around the bush, was he? So I tell him the story I wanted, and I have a hunch he didn't even write any notes while I spoke, because I spoke too fast. But it didn't matter. He probably rambled a little bit, too. He remembered every last detail, and the stories always came out perfect, at least as far as I was concerned. Alright, Buscema began penciling Conan the Barbarian with number 25, following Barry Smith's celebrated run, and debuted as the Conan artist of the black and white comics magazine omnibus Savage Sword of Conan with issue number 1. I need to tell Tom about this so he can watch this episode, because he loves Conan. He would eventually contribute to more than 100 issues of each title. That's impressive, giving him one of the most prolific runs for an artist on a single character. He additionally drew the Conan Sunday and Daily Syndicate newspaper comic strip upon its premiere in 1978, and even contributed to some storyboard illustrations. Oh, nice! For the 1982 Conan movie. Very nice. As well as painting 4 covers for the Conan magazines. In 2010, Comics Bulletin ranked Buscema's work on Conan the Barbarian 7th on its list of top 10 1970s Marvels. For about 10 years, he would produce an average 3 to 4 books worth of pencils a month, such as Nova and Miss Marvel. In addition to his regular assignments, he would pencil covers and fill-ins of titles including Captain America, Captain Britain, Daredevil, The Frankenstein Monster, Howard the Duck, Masters of Kung Fu, Red Sonja, and Warlock. My god, he was a busy man. He also drew a story for the science fiction anthology Worlds Unknown. Buscema contributed as well to Marvel's black and white comics magazine, including the features Khazar in Savage Tales number 1 and Bloodstone in The Rampaging Hulk number 1. And Doc Savage number 1 and 3. The 70s were his time, dang. Other magazine work ran the gamut from horror, Dracula Lives, Monsters Unleashed, Tales of the Zombie, to humor, crazy, and pizzazz. Buscema left the Thor title for a time to launch the Marvel version of the Edgar Rice Burroughs character Tarzan in 1977. Other licensed projects included a 72-page The Wizard of Oz movie adaptation in an oversized Treasury Edition format with De Zuniga inking. Zuniga inking. For Power Records, which produced children's books and record sets, Buscema drew Star Trek and Conan the Barbarian comics. He contributed some superhero drawings for Pro, the NFL official magazine, 1970, and penciled some chapters of the first issue of Marvel Comics Super Special, featuring the rock group Kiss. In 1978, Well, I keep thinking of Kiss as an 80s band. I keep forgetting that they started in the 70s. There's a lot of bands where I hear their name and I immediately associate them with the 80s, and then I look at their discography and it's like, oh no, wait, they started in the 70s, and a lot of their greatest hits were in the 70s. I don't know why I keep thinking they're 80s. The one band that I never had that problem with was Pink Floyd, because they sound like they have a 70s sound to them. Watch, they're gonna be starting in the 60s. Oh my god. They started in 1965. What the fuck? Yeah, I'm not a very big, well, it's not that I'm not a very big music person, it's just I have my certain number of bands that I like, and I will listen to them frequently, and also a whole bunch of, like, shit songs that I'll listen to when I'm running, like, songs that I don't need to think too hard about while I'm running. But, yeah. Alright. In 1978, a small press publisher, Sal Quartuccio, released The Art of John Buscema, a retrospective that included an interview, previously unpublished sketches and drawings, and a cover that was also sold as a poster. Buscema capped off the decade penciling writer Doug Moennick's 3-issue Weird World epic fantasy tale, Warriors of the Shadow Realm, in Marvel Super Special 11-13. Pacific Comics released an accompanying portfolio of 6 signed color plates from the story. I have the Jason Aaron miniseries for Weird World. It's like okay, but after reading the Saga of Gore the God Butcher, I'm starting to think that Jason Aaron has a very specific message he's trying to push, that big strong men are not in fact big strong men for some weird reason. Anyway, we're not getting into that. In the mid-1970s, Buscema ran the John Buscema Art School, which advertised for students in the pages of many Marvel titles. Stan Lee made appearances as a guest lecturer at Buscema's school, and some of the school's graduates, including Bob Hall and Bruce Patterson, went on to become professional cartoonists. Buscema later said that teaching the class was very gratifying, but that having to make the 60-mile drive after a day's work was too exhausting. I do not blame you. And ultimately forced him to give it up. Buscema then collaborated with Lee on the book How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. As a primer on comic book art and storytelling based on the comic book art classes Buscema had given a few years prior, and had remained in print for over 25 years, and in its 33rd printing as of 2007. Those books are probably going to be freaking expensive, aren't they? Alright, so now we get to the 80s. Alright. After drawing the first issue of The Savage She-Hulk in 1980, Buscema abandoned regular superhero work in order to spearhead art duties on all 3 Conan titles. The popularity of the character spurred the release of a Conan movie in 1982. Buscema provided pencils and inks for a 48-page movie adaptation. He continued to tackle other high-profile projects such as a Silver Surfer story for Epic Illustrated #1, a King Arthur story in Marvel Preview #22, the St. Francis of Assisi biography, Francis, Brother of the Universe, the second Superman and Spider-Man team-up, and an adaptation of the 1981 movie Raiders of the Lost Ark. He left King Conan in 1982 after 9 issues, although he remained with Marvel's Robert E. Howard franchise with the revival of the Cull series for 10 issues, and left The Savage Sword of Conan in 1984 with 101, with a series of short stories that he plotted himself. After penciling the Conan the Destroyer movie adaptation in 1984 and the Conan of the Isles graphic novel in 1987, he left Conan the Barbarian with number 190 in 1987, ending a 14-year association with the character. 14 years with one character. God damn, that's pretty impressive. Alright. After nearly 5 years away from the superheroes, except for the first 2 issues of the X-Men related 4-issue miniseries Magic, Buscema returned to familiar ground as regular penciler on The Avengers from 255 to 300. He was regular penciler on Fantastic Four for its 300th issue during a 15-issue stint from 296 to 309. Additionally, he fit in the 3-issue film adaptation Labyrinth and the 4-issue miniseries Mephisto, starring a character he created with Stan Lee in The Silver Surfer from 2 paragraphs ago. Buscema re-teamed with Lee on The Silver Surfer himself with the 1988 graphic novel Silver Surfer Judgment Day, self-inked and done entirely as full-page panels. That year, he and inker Klaus Janson drew a Wolverine solo feature in the bi-weekly anthology Marvel Comics Presents. I tried to get specific dates for the Wolverine Weapon X for one of my reviews, and for some reason the Marvel website just refused to give me the specific dates and was just trying to say, oh, they all started in 1988, and it's like, no, dude, when did this issue come out? This very specific issue come out? It was very annoying. He penciled the 14 issues of the first Wolverine ongoing series, self-inked on 7 and 8. Bill Sinzowicz, who inked the last 5 issues of that run, recalled Buscema's pencil work as the sturdiest foundation an inker or an embellisher could possibly hope to build on, and their beauty was not in their attention to fastidiously rendered minutiae, but instead were marvels of deceptive simplicity. Each page an example of grace, elegance, and power. Alright, later career. Buscema began his 6th decade in the field by joining Roy Thomas for the return of The Savage Sword of Conan in 191 for a 20-issue run. Conan the Rogue, a graphic novel Buscema plotted, penciled, inked, and colored over a period of 5 years in his spare time, appeared that same year. He both penciled and inked the graphic novel Wolverine Bloody Choices. Buscema returned to crime fiction with The Punisher War Journal. Oh, he worked with the War Journal. Number 23 to 30. That titles 1993 Summer Annual and the 1994 graphic novel A Man Named Frank, a parallel universe Punisher Western tale. Interesting. He penciled the Punisher portions of 1994's Archie Meets the Punisher team-up. No longer attached to a regular series after his Punisher run, he penciled and inked the Avengers Annual number 23, and 5 more black and white Conan adventures, serving as that Marvel franchise's final artist on The Savage Sword of Conan with 235, and on the short-lived spin-off Conan the Savage with number 10. Though 1999, he penciled a variety of superhero comics, both penciled and inked a black and white short story for Shadows and Light, and made a final return to Conan with The Death Covered in Gold 3-issue miniseries. Buscema worked with DC Comics for the first time in 2000. I don't know, dude. I think you're hopping onto that bandwagon a little too soon. Initially doing both pencils and inks on a Batman black and white short story in Batman Gotham Knights #7, he reunited with Stan Lee on the 2001 one-shot Just Imagine Stan Lee and John Buscema's Creating Superman. He finished the pencils on 2003's Superman Blood of My Ancestors, begun by Jill Kane, who had since died and had just signed on for a 5-issue miniseries with Roy Thomas, JLA Barbarians, though he died after finishing the first issue. Aww. An 11 and 17-inch lithograph print of the late 1960s, early 1970s Avengers, penciled by Buscema and painted in watercolor by Alex Ross for the publisher Dynamic Forces, was Buscema's last professional work. Buscema's passion for drawing was such that he continued to draw and sketch in his spare time, often on the back of comic book art pages, and these images form a considerable body of work in their own right. His brother, Sal Buscema, recalled, "This guy used to eat, sleep, and breathe drawing. It didn't matter what was going on around him. He would get bored with it and start sketching. He just couldn't stop drawing. His back of board sketches were better than some of the stuff he did on the front. He'd get a spark of inspiration and turn the page over and draw whatever was in his skull." All right. Buscema, who lived in Port Jefferson, New York, on Long Island at the time of his death, was married to Dolores Buscema, with whom he had a son, John Jr., and a daughter, Diane. His granddaughter, Stephanie Buscema, is a freelance illustrator and cartoonist who started out as an inker for her grandfather. Aww. And, all right. We already got through the bibliographies. Okay, so that's a decent coverage of everything he's done. He has been a very, very busy boy for pretty much his entire career. All right, so before we continue with the interview, or before we get to a video, how about we check out some of his artwork? Oh yeah, that's a very, very Conan issue. I think Tom has this one. I'll have to ask him. Here's a good compilation piece of everything he's done. Let's get some Silver Surfer action in here. Yeah, he does have a way with like, I don't know, the posing and the dynamicism of a scene. We can't leave without some Mephisto. Yeah, it's so weird to think. This is especially when it comes to the one more day storyline. But I've heard some people try and argue that Mephisto is not the devil, or it's when Spider-Man made a deal with Mephisto, it's not really a deal with the devil, and it's like he's literally called a demon. He is the devil. He is one of the devils of the Marvel Universe, because of course Marvel Universe has multiple different devils. Another classic Conan in 92. Ooh, Thor. I really like this one. It really does give off that like godly aura that Thor is supposed to have. Why does Vision look so disappointed with the world here? He looks so disappointed with everything. So I think that's a good little looky-loo. And I also saw this video down here. You guys probably saw it earlier. Let's I wonder if this is part of an interview, probably. So cool watching this. I don't know about you guys, but it's so cool. Even back when we were doing the Rob Liefeld episode, say what you will, I think it's very cool that he was willing to just do a live sketch of Deadpool right there on the con floor for people. And same with Jack Kirby and same here. It's just cool to watch them do it. You see the process of them doing it. Probably doesn't help that my art abilities are comparable to a potato. I think the big reason why I'm not an artist is I don't think I have the patience to do this. Writing goes by a lot faster than drawing for me, and I feel like I would just lose my mind trying to focus this hard on one piece of artwork. I love that lining work too that he does with it. The way he does his shadowing with like the kneecap and like the dip in where the muscle is on his thigh. How he does the shadowing there. Hello, baby girl. Yes, I see you. Don't think about jumping on the desk. No. Sorry, Buttercup's trying to jump up on the desk. I feel like Captain America's boots would be so much fun to draw, though, because of the little flap thing on the top there. the scales. Okay, quick question. Are those things on Captain America's suit supposed to be like chainmail, or are they scales? Because I always see them look like scales, and it's like, what is that even supposed to be? That was fun. Oh. Creator of Dilbert is a cancer scare. That's sad. Okay, so this is a video from the channel God Loves Comics. I'm trying really, really, really hard to make sure everyone gets credited and nobody gets upset, because the last thing I want is YouTube busting down my door again. Alright. Let's see. Alright, so this is from, Art Shutter. I found this video. It's a quick little video of John Buscema's.
Today we will take a journey through art and mastery of John Buscema, a man whose pencil brought legendary heroes to life and defined the very essence of comic book storytelling. He wasn't just a comic artist, he was a visual architect, sculpting worlds with bold lines, dynamic motion and raw emotion. His work on the Avengers, Silver Surfer, Thor and Conan the Barbarian cemented his status as one of the most influential illustrators in comic history. From mythic warriors to cosmic champions, his characters exuded power, grace and energy, each panel a masterpiece of movement and anatomy. His talent wasn't just in drawing heroes, but in crafting epic, cinematic narratives that leapt off the page and into the imaginations of readers around the world. So let's explore the magic behind Buscema's artistic genius, explore his most iconic works, and celebrate the legacy of a man who helped redefine the comic book medium.
Okay, I have to say, with Vision looking red like that, or all red like that, I did not recognize him. I'm so used to seeing him in his usual coloring that it took me a hot minute to realize that that was Vision.
Born Giovanni Natales Buscema on December 11, 1927, in Brooklyn, New York, he grew up in a working-class Italian-American family. His passion for art emerged early, inspired by Hal Foster's Prince Valiant, Alex Raymond's Flash Gordon, and Bern Hogarth's Tarzan. He studied at the High School of Music and Art in Manhattan and later took night classes at Pratt Institute and anatomy classes at the Brooklyn Museum, refining his skills in life drawing and commercial illustration. Buscema entered the comic industry in 1948, landing a job at Timely Comics under Stan Lee, who was then the editor-in-chief.
Wait, is that supposed to be Stan Lee? Or is that Buscema? I've seen pictures of Stan Lee without his glasses, and he looks fucking weird without them.
At the time, Timely was publishing a variety of genres, including crime, romance, westerns, and jungle adventure. His first recorded work was a 7-page crime story in Crime Fighters No. 4. During his early years, Buscema worked alongside Sid Shores, Carl Burgos, Mike Sekowsky, and Gene Colan, refining his skills in figure drawing and composition. By the early 50s, John Buscema and
It's so funny looking at pictures of the old pros. And you see pictures of new pros now. Like, the old pros look like way more put together than the pros of today. But it's because I don't think okay, this is my theory. I don't think any of the old pros were thinking that they were going to, you know, take over an industry. I don't think any of them had that mentality, which is probably why they're way more level-headed than the pros of today. They were just doing their job. And so because of that, they just focused on their work and didn't really get into weird bullshit like a lot of modern pros do.
Figure drawing and composition. By the early 50s, John Buscema entered the US Army, but his service was short as he was discharged due to a peptic.
Oh, he was in the army? Yeah, interesting.
ulcer, so he continued to work as a freelancer
ulcer.
for both Tim Lee, which at that time was called Atlas Comics, and also for other publishers such as Quality Comics, St. John Publications, and Ziff Davis. His work in that decade included Roy Rogers and Nature Boy, the latter being the first superhero drawn by Buscema, who was co-created by Jerry Siegel, one of the creators of Superman. As the comic industry declined in the 1950s, Buscema left comics to pursue advertising illustration, where he developed a more refined, realistic style. However, in 1966, Stan Lee
Again, it's like him without the glasses looks so weird.
convinced him to return to Timely, now called Marvel, marking the beginning of his most prolific era. He began drawing on Jack Kirby's sketches in Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., followed by 3 issues of Hulk in Tales to Astonish. He then became the regular artist for the Avengers, starting with issue 41, a series that became one of his most outstanding works. Buscema's artistic evolution was evident in his dynamic compositions, powerful anatomy, and expressive faces. His ability to depict movement and emotion made him one of Marvel's most sought-after artists.
Dang it. Yeah, like that. The way he does the muscles here, the posing. It's very natural looking, but also like fantastical at the same time.
In addition to the Avengers, other notable works during the 1960s include The Silver Surfer in collaboration with Stan Lee, which is considered one of his most memorable works in his comic book history. He also stood out in the first issues of Namor, and he created several sketches for The Amazing Spider-Man, later finished by John Romita Sr. and Jim Mooney. The 70s brought Buscema, the Fantastic Four and Thor, but perhaps the most important thing that would happen in that decade for the New York artist was his encounter with Conan the Barbarian. Since he would end up drawing more than 100 issues of the different series of this mythical character, becoming
His style is absolutely perfect for a character like Conan. His very masculine, very mythic style is perfect for something like Conan.
one of his most prolific works. He was so committed to Conan that by the 80s he abandoned his work with superheroes to head the 3 Marvel series based on Robert E. Howard's character. The popularity of these stories was such that it prompted the release of the Conan the Barbarian movie in 1982. John Buscema drew and inked the 48-page comic book adaptation of the film. Then he left the Savage Sword of Conan in 1984 after making the argument for several issues.
Wait, making the argument? What do you mean? Oh, making the art in it. Okay, his accent is a little heavy, so I thought he said making the argument. It's like, making the argument for what?
After drawing the movie adaptation of Conan the Destroyer in 1984 and the graphic novel Conan of the Isles in 1987, he left Conan the Barbarian, closing a 14-year stint with the character. By the end of the decade, he teamed up again with Stan Lee in the graphic novel Silver Surfer, Judgment Day, inking himself and drawing entirely with full-page panels. This war brought forth a cosmic philosophical tale that explored themes of power, morality, and redemption. John Buscema's depiction of cosmic entities like Galactus, Mephisto, and the Silver Surfer is grand and dramatic, emphasizing their godlike presence. Buscema's artistic style was characterized by figures exuded movement and power, making action sequences feel cinematic.
A lot of people were really pissed off about the whole gender swapping of the Silver Surfer because they pointed out that the female Silver Surfer only existed in like one comic. But then you have characters like her who are in the comic books, and she's been in quite a few of them, especially alongside Silver Surfer. So it's like, well, why didn't you just have her be in there. I forget her name. For some reason, I want to say it's Nova, but then I know it's not Nova. But it's so strange how they didn't include her, especially because she's got that cool fire hair.
By the end of the 80s, he drew Wolverine in the bi-weekly series Marvel Comics Presents. From numbers 1 to 10, he also drew the first regular Wolverine series. In the early years of the new decade of the 90s, he continued to be involved with Wolverine, drawing and inking the graphic novel Wolverine Bloody Choices. In 1991, he would meet again with a character he knew very well. John Buscema returned to the Savage Sword of Conan in issue 191 and for 20 issues. That same year, the graphic novel Conan the Rogues appeared on the market, scripted, drawn, inked and colored by himself over a period of 7 years during his spare time.
Look how fucking cool that looks. Like you could just feel the energy on the page.
As we have seen so far, John Buscema is known for his work with Marvel, but for the new millennium he had a small foray into DC Comics, initially working on drawing and inking Batman, Gotham Knights #7, and then he teamed up again with Stan Lee in 2001 on the special Just Imagine Stan Lee and John Buscema creating Superman. While working with Roy Thomas on Justice League Barbarians, he was diagnosed with stomach cancer and sadly died at the age of 74. Inducted into the Eisner Hall of Fame in 2002, Buscema's legacy is one of artistic mastery and storytelling brilliance. His impact on comics is immeasurable, and his work remains a benchmark for aspiring artists. John Buscema was more than just a comic book artist, he was a visual storyteller, a master draftsman, and a cornerstone of Marvel's success. His ability to bring characters to life with power, grace, and emotion cemented his place among the greatest artists in comic history.
Alright, so we got to see a little bit more of his artwork there. I want to check out the Silver Surfer Judgment Day because that sounds pretty interesting. Along with the Conan of the Isles, that also looks very interesting. Alright, so I do have this one almost half an hour interview from a comic book historian, but I'll save that for the end. But first, we're going to look at the 2 Tomorrows interviews I found that look interesting. The first one, John Buscema interview by John B. Cook. I wonder how long ago this was. Jack Kirby Collector. Alright, John Buscema came to join the Marvel Age of Comics in 1966 for first working on Nick Fury and Hulk. Exceptional artist. Okay. John was interviewed via telephone on November 18th, 1997. Okay, so this interview happened in 97. Alright, so Collector. Did you read comics as a kid? Buscema. Yes, I think I started around age 12. The first comic I ever saw blew my mind. It was Superman. By 14 or 15, I stopped reading comics. That was back around 1939 to 41. Do you remember seeing Kirby's work when you were a kid? Buscema. No, I probably did, but I saw Kirby stuff, just a bit of it, when I started working for Marvel back in 1948. I saw 1 or 2 pages of pencils that he had done that were laying around the studio there. I was very impressed with the drawing. It was a different style than he had later, very loose. Were you an avid reader of comic strips? Well, at least the yawn waited until later. I took a nap earlier, so that's why I wasn't as tired. I was never really interested in the stories, but I was always invested in the drawings. The 3 artists I followed were Hal Foster, Alex Raymond, and Bern Hogarth. I don't know how many years of Sunday comic pages I saved, but then in 1957, I threw everything away. Oh, why would you do that? I was angry, as you should be. Comics were in a bad situation. I couldn't buy a job in those days. I'd work for Marvel, worked for Western Printing. I don't know how many different outfits. They all folded. It was like a domino effect. I just got ticked off, and all those strips and anything comic related that I'd saved, I threw out. When I think about it, tears well up in my eyes. I mean, I understand the frustration at the time, but same, I don't know. I don't think there is anything that the comic industry can do to make me want to just throw out all of the trades and books that I have right now. I don't think there's anything they could do. Because as much as I am disappointed by the comic book industry, and as much as I want to strangle a few of the pros that are working in there today, I'm never going to get rid of my trades. Even after I get married and have kids, that's never going to happen. In fact, I'm probably going to put the books behind some sort of glass to keep the little tykes from rifling through it, because, children are little chaos gremlins who are most likely going to rip out the pages so they can tape it on their wall because it's pretty. I mean, kids gonna be kids, so what can you do? Except take precautions. Did you have aspirations to be a comic artist? No, I never really wanted to. I wanted to be a painter, but who can make a living at that? Fair enough. How'd you get into comics? Funny, I never got anything making the rounds until I read a wanted ad in the New York Times. Tommy was looking for a cartoonist. That's the first time I met Stan Lee. What was he like? Like he is today, except he had a little more hair, I guess. He was a very energetic guy, very personable guy. At the time, I thought he was a genius because I knew nothing about comics. He gave me a staff job, my first job in comics. I worked in a large room with a group of artists. Carl Burgos, Sid Shores, Dan DiCario, and Gene Colan were there. Bill Everett worked there too, but he wasn't on staff. There were many others, but I can't recall their names. We worked on the 14th floor of the Empire State Building. What? He actually worked at the Empire State... It was an office building, not just a tourist attraction. I gotta remember that. They had half the floor, and there were several rooms. I started in 1948 with crime comics, and I graduated into westerns. We bounced around to whatever was popular at the time. I worked for Timely for about a year and a half, and that's when they put everybody on freelance. The story I heard is that one day, Martin Goodman opened up a closet and found hundreds of pages piled up that had never been published. These were stories that editors were unhappy with, and they just tossed them into the closet. What? So Martin Goodman decided no more staff, only freelancers, and we were all put on a freelance basis. What? I'm trying to work out the logic here. So, what did they determine? Oh, because there was so many of these stories that didn't make the cut that we're doing freelancer basis? Or were they thinking, well, we have all this material here, might as well publish this, so I guess you guys are all freelancers now. That story sounds sus. That story sounds sus as hell. But anyway, I loved it. I was working at home, and I started working for other publishers. I was working for so many different publishers at one time, I had guys working for me. I was just roughing it in it, and they were doing the tightening and inking. I always had in the back of my mind that I was going to get out of comics. And after 48 years, I got out. Well, the goal happened. It just took a little while. I never really was happy with comics. I think if I were paid enough that I could turn out a page every 2 or 3 days, maybe I would have been happy. But I always pushed, turned out as many pages as I could in a day. Jack Kirby lived it, he breathed it, it was his life. Everything he did was comics related. He was constantly thinking of plots, of characters. I had no interest in comics. The only interest I had was how much I can earn and how fast I can make it. At one time, I averaged 3 to 4 pages a day. I knew artists who were always having a financial problem. It's a common thing in this business. You've got to have the discipline to get up in the morning and turn out X amount of pages a day. I guess I can see the logic there, but it does seem like he had fun at some point. Because if he really truly hated comics, he could have just stopped at any time. How did you first meet Jack? Back in 1965 or 66, I got a call from Marvel. They wanted me to go back. I'll be honest with you, I was afraid, but it was appealing to me because I wouldn't have to commute. I could work at home. It was a tremendous effort for me to make that decision. But I started working for them in 1966, and I met Jack one day in Stan's office. Stan and I were working on a plot, and Jack walked in. As far as meeting Jack, I think I can count the times on one hand, just for short periods. I saw him at the convention out in San Diego. We exchanged a few words, pleasantries, whatever. We drove home together once, lived on Long Island, and Don Heck drove us home. That's about the extent of it. I didn't have much contact with Jack, although I would not have been able to survive in comics if not for Jack Kirby. When Stan called me back in 1966, I had one hell of a time trying to get back in the groove. You can do illustration, you can do layouts, but that doesn't mean you can do comics. It's a whole different ballgame. Stan gave me a book to do. I think it was the Hulk. I did a pretty bad job. Stan thought I should study Jack's art and books, so he gave me a pile of Kirby's comics. Well, everybody was given Jack Kirby books. It was the first time I'd seen his work. I started working from them, and that's what saved me. That's actually kind of cool. I mean, despite the fact that Stan Lee and Jack Kirby parted on pretty bad terms, the fact that Stan Lee respected Kirby enough to be like, hey, look, study my friend's art style and you're gonna make it. That shows that he trusted Kirby to set the path enough to just be like, yeah, just look at these books and you'll be fine. What did you learn from them? The layouts, for crying out loud. I copied. Every time I needed a panel, I'd look up at one of his panels and just rearrange it. If you look at some of the early stuff I did, you know where Kirby had the explosions with a bunch of guys flying all over the place? I'd swipe them cold. Stan was happy. The editors were happy, so I was happy. Did you get a step up in pay when you went into comics? It went up, but not that much. For what I was wary of was, how long was this going to last? But Stan was very convincing. He said, John, things are different today. We're making a big comeback. Things are picking up. We're making tremendous strides. Well, Stan was correct about that. Did you go into the office every week? The first few books I brought in as I did them. After a few months, I'd go in whenever I felt like it. There were times I'd only go in 3 or 4 times a year. I mailed. I very rarely went into the city. Did you ever lose anything in the mail? No, but Don Heck did. He lost a job once in the mail, and at that point he decided he would Xerox everything. Were you close to Don? Yes, he lived about 15 minutes away from me. We were pretty close. I made a lot of friends in this business, but some have died and most have retired and moved away. What kind of story conferences did you have with Stan? At the beginning, I'd go in and discuss the story, and we would throw ideas back and forth. When Stan became more confident in my abilities to do stories, he'd call me up or I'd call him up and say, Stan, I'm ready for a plot. What have you got in mind? The last time I worked with Stan was on The Silver Surfer. After that, I started working with Roy Thomas. I worked with a lot of different writers. I understand there was a problem with Silver Surfer number 4. Yes, we worked on the plot, Stan and I. I was very, very excited about doing the book. I thought, this is one job I'm going to get away from the Kirby layouts. I'm going to try something different, which I did. I think it had a different look about it from the previous stuff I'd been doing. People were congratulating me on this particular issue. Stan tore the book to pieces. He started with the first page. Well, okay, it's not bad. And on and on and on. Every second page he ripped it to shreds. This is not good. This should be done this way. I walked out of that damn office of his. I didn't know which way was up or down. I was completely demoralized. I walked into John Romeda's office. John looked at me and saw I was very upset. I said, John, how the hell do you do comics? Oh, it's kind of funny hearing that interaction. Maybe 7 or 8 years had gone by. I get a call from Stan one morning. We usually exchange pleasantries. Stan said something. I think he called me an SOB or something. And I said, What's up, Stan? What'd I do wrong? And he said, John, you remember that book we worked on, the Silver Surfer and Thor book? I remembered it very well. John, that was the greatest thing you've ever done. The greatest comic you've ever done. The greatest thing you and I have ever worked out. Well, I thought he was pulling my leg and I didn't say a word. Stan says, Johnny, you still there? And I said, Stan, are you kidding? Are you serious? And he said, No, John, really, seriously. Well, I tried to refresh his memory. He said, I don't remember. Stan! I don't remember saying anything like that. I don't remember ever telling you that. That book was beautiful. How could I possibly? Oh. Maybe it's one of those cases where he didn't like it at the time, but as time went on, he grew to like that issue. Well, I tell this to many, many people. How many guys have been destroyed by an editor? Some editor who just happened to get up on the wrong side of the bed and does this to some guy who's putting everything into his job. I know what happened to Don Heck. I remember Don coming up to me saying, John, help me. I don't know what the hell to do anymore. Did you have to redraw it? No, the book was published. But what happened was, in those days, for some reason, the Silver Surfer just didn't click. The #1 issue sold well, but each succeeding issue lost sales. It just went down, which was possibly what was bothering Stan. Many years later, Stan told me at lunch one day, John, I just didn't know what the hell to do with the damn thing. I didn't know what direction we were going. It's been said that Jack was upset about the Surfer series because he had his own vision for the character. Yes, I could understand Jack's resentment. This was his thing, his idea, his creation, and it's been taken away from him and given to me. Do you think Jack was treated fairly at Marvel? You know the story better than I do. What I know is secondhand. We all know how Jack was treated. They cut his page rate. You know the story? No. This is again something told to me. I don't remember by who. Well, Kirby was very fast. Martin Goodman was upset that Jack Kirby was making so much money. He felt, Jack's turning out so much work, let's cut his rate. Damn, that's stupid. That's when Jack left Marvel and went over to DC. This is the story that was told to me. I'll never forget when I walked into Stan's office and heard that Jack left. I thought they were going to close up. As far as I was concerned, Jack was the backbone of Marvel. Did you have to hustle fast to work on books Jack left behind? I didn't have to work any faster. I was given the Fantastic Four. That was very intimidating following the best. I worked on Thor and Fantastic Four. Did you have any favorite inkers? Frank Gaucia. My brother, Sal, did a fabulous job. Tom Palmer did some absolutely unbelievable stuff on early Avengers. George Klein, I was never happy with. He had a very heavy hand. Were you one of your own favorite inkers? Naturally. I know exactly what I want, but I never inked that much. I would ink occasionally. Well, I mean, it would be unreasonable for you to do all of those projects, both penciling and inking. If you don't keep doing it, you lose it. I think Joe Kubert is the smartest man in the business. He pencils and inks himself, and nobody can do a better job than Joe. What was it like doing How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way? That came out of the workshop I had. I had invited Roy Thomas, Gil Kane, and Stan Lee to come up and give a talk. I had about 30 students in my class. Stan was very impressed and thought we should do a book together. And we did. Looks like that's the end of that interview. That was quick. I think that's pretty enlightening. Like, he sounds like a very humble guy, but he's also... he's got some pride to him. He's very humble, and he's honest about just his opinion about comics in general. And I get where some of his frustrations were coming from. I mean, when you gotta work for hire, you do take jobs you're not exactly excited about, and everybody knows that unless you're already wealthy or you just get the right patron, you hardly make money painting. But yeah, I'm really digging his personality in general. Let's see how long the other tomorrow's interview is. Okay, not horribly long. I'm gonna take a quick drink of LaCroix first before we move forward with this interview. Alright, so an Avengers interview, sort of, with John Buscema. A conversation between two longtime collaborators about a half-remembered sojourn. Okay, conducted by Roy Thomas, transcribed by Brian K. Morris. Alright. John and Dolores Buscema smile for Dan Thomas's camera. Alright, pretty cheerful, considering that the chauffeurs hired to drive them from Long Island to White Plains got lost and took several hours to get them there. Alright, even at final stage of proofreading. Okay, I'm gonna skip this introductory paragraph. Well, let's see, when did this interview take place? Say up here. I'm gonna just say it's 2000. Alright. Alright. Alright, Roy Thomas. You wonder why I saved this stuff? Well, Roy, I'm not a fan of comics. No kidding. As far as I'm concerned, if I never saw another comic, the only thing I've saved is a couple of Conan books we worked on, and that's it. I got rid of everything. One of the reasons, which upset me over the years, is that other people were inking my stuff, and that is not my work. I can't look at it. The ones I inked, yes, I keep. Anything with superheroes, I'm not interested. Only the Conans. You inked the last Conans we did together, that 3-issue series 2 or 3 years ago, and that graphic novel you plotted, penciled, inked, and even colored in the 90s, then asked me to dialogue Conan the Rogue, was some of your best work ever. Of course, you always had the option of inking Conan. You just didn't want to, generally. No, it was a matter of trying to keep up with the schedules, because at one time, if you remember, Roy, I was doing the black and white and the color book. Of course, Stan would have really wanted you inking all that work because he'd rather get more penciling out of you. Me too. Or wouldn't have really wanted you inking all that work because he'd rather get more penciling out of you. Me too. So, obviously, very few of your adventure stories were inked by you. Taking a brief look at our adventure work together, the first one you penciled back in 1967 was number 41. Do you remember being put on the Avengers? I think that was the first full book assignment you had when you returned to Marvel. Yeah, I started back in 66, and it must have been right after that. You'd done S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hulk over Kirby breakdowns. Then Stan had you do a fill-in issue or 2 of the Avengers with me while Don Heck was busy elsewhere, and I kept you on for another year or so. Had you ever done a superhero group book before? No, that was the first one. And hopefully the last, huh? Well, if you know how to pace it so that you don't have 17 guys in each panel. You did that well. At one point we had Hercules shave off the beard he had in Thor. Do you remember, is that something you and I both wanted? I can't remember. I don't either. All these Xeroxes of pages you sent me, they don't even ring a bell. I completely forgot about this stuff. It's kind of funny. Pencils from the late 60s, pinup. Alright. Not even in number 43 to 44, where you designed the Red Guardian in his Russian communist outfit. I sort of vaguely remember that one. You always seem to come to life when we'd be doing the mythological stuff, like Hercules fighting some of these gods or monsters. That I enjoyed because I don't have the restrictions of the goddamn automobiles and skyscrapers. I can create anything that comes to my imagination. That's why Conan appealed to me. I had a lot of freedom in those books. I could do anything with the buildings and create costumes. Again, I don't like drawing mechanical things. I just don't enjoy it. I like animated stuff, Well, he did do a lot of that, like movie work, so that does make sense. Alright. Every artist has different things they enjoy drawing. Well, Herb Trimp used to draw the most beautiful airplanes. He loved doing airplanes, and I hate drawing them. There were fans who wrote to me when I started doing Conan and doing less superhero work, why don't you quit that stupid Conan and go back to the superheroes? But what I enjoyed most was doing a little bit of everything. First of all, Conan was something that hadn't been done before, and I loved the Howard books. I fell in love with them as soon as I read them, and I was chomping at the bit, and I wanted to do them so badly. John is referring to 1970, when he was the first artist offered the assignment of drawing Conan the Barbarian. Well, all you have had to do was cut your rate in half, and they'd have let you do it. Martin Goodman wanted to get back at the tiny bit of money he was paying out for the rights, net $150 an issue in some way. Oh God. That was his Edric. Do you remember drawing in the Avengers number 46, Giant Man running around inside an anthill fighting ants? Again, it's so foreign to me, really. 49 to 50 are two of the only Avengers issues you inked. They have all the mythological stuff again, which had the feeling of the Thor strip you draw later. Yeah, that's my inking, right? Again, I don't remember the book. When you were doing the John Buscema sketchbook recently with Dave Spurlock, you didn't recall designing any characters, but here's a villain you designed, the Grim Reaper in number 52. Do you remember him? I know it was my idea to have him carry a scythe, but I have this feeling it was your idea to make the scythe part of his actual arm. No, I don't remember that at all, Roy. If I could help it, I didn't want to create anything. You penciled Black Panther in that issue with the full face mask, but Stan decided we should make certain readers could see he was black. So we had to redraw the whole book to show his face, Vinnie Colada inked. In number 55, George Klein became the inker with more of a Joe Sonata kind of style. Had you known Klein from the old days when you were both at Marvel or Timely? Yeah, Timely. I started there in 48. George Klein was there before me. I was one of the last guys to get in. I was probably the youngest guy in the place at the time, and I remember another guy named Joe something, a young kid about my age, and Gene Colan was working there about a month or two before I did. And the next year they laid everybody off staff and turned them into freelancers. They had a closet full of artwork that was partially finished. Apparently, if the editors weren't happy with some work, they'd throw it in a closet, and when Goodman saw it, he went bananas. And I'll never forget, it was one of the saddest times that I experienced. One of the guys that just got married came back from his honeymoon and he was out of a job. Oh, that does suck. You know, I'm starting to wonder if Martin Goodman is part of the reason why a lot of the relationships between artists and the company went kaput. Because he seems to be a reoccurring character here. Alright. John's most famous Avengers cover, which heralded the coming of Vision. Alright. Back in the 60s and 70s, we almost never wasted a page once it was drawn and paid for. If we wanted to pay for a new page, we had better have a damn good reason. What the hell, there's a lot of money involved. But they weren't on top of it in 49. There was Al Jaff, he was one of the editors. There was Jesus, what the hell are their names? I see their faces, but I can't remember. There was a whole raft of these guys. These guys would just throw this stuff in the closet. I really can't blame Goodman. You know, one of the things that was different in those days, we didn't get paid by the page. We were paid a weekly salary. We were on staff, the whole bullpen. We were about 20 guys in one room. There was Danny DiCarlo, Sid Shores, Carl Burgos, a whole raft of people in that room. Burgos laid out a bunch of covers, didn't he? He did. The production people were in a different part of the office. I very seldom walked out of the bullpen. That was in the Empire State Building. I was there for about a year and a half, and that's when things hit the fan with Goodman. You were in the famous room 1404. I wonder, is there a 13th floor in the Empire State? Because if not, that means the 14th floor was really the 13th floor, which would explain a lot. Could be. But I do remember the 14th floor for the simple reason that on the same floor there was an outfit whose name was something with gold. They'd buy it and sell gold jewelry. And they used to advertise on the radio, they would say, the 14th floor of the Empire State Building. That's why it stuck in my mind. So how do you feel about George Klein's inking compared to some of the others? From what I've seen, it's a very credible job, not bad. He wasn't that old when he died, was he? He was in his 50s. He'd inked Superman for years and could do that so not style, that was very popular then. I also sent you a copy of that robot who became Ultron. Do you remember if I sent you any reference on that, as I seem to recall? Roy, I don't remember. The only thing that I remember is when I saw the page that you sent, it rang a bell, that's all. You don't recall if he was always going to be Ultron, or if he started out as just the robot? But Ultron in his various incarnations had easily been the most popular villain you and I ever created. I even co-wrote an Avengers comics a few months ago with him as the villain. He's still around? Oh yeah, the two most popular characters you and I devised together for the Avengers were Ultron, and the other was the Vision, who came along in number 57 as part of the same storyline. Well, I think it was already created, and I just made a revision. And he probably would be very surprised to see Ultron in the movies. Alright. Jack Kirby had done a Vision back in the 40s. I sent you a picture of that one, but I asked for the diamond symbol on his chest, and you added, on your own, that jewel on his forehead. So he's partly new and partly old. Do you remember that final page where the kid finds Ultron's head and is kicking it around? Bumping the head all around? No, I don't. Roy, let me put it this way. I never read a comic book. In all these years I've been doing comics, I've never read one. I think we'll stop this interview here. All the links are going to be down below, because I really want to get to the interview here. That's going to be about a half an hour. But if you want to read through this one, go ahead. But it seems like the big answer to Buscema at this point in his life is, I don't remember the details. Please stop asking me the details of what happened back then. Which I suppose fair enough. He did so much stuff, it would be hard for him to remember. Alright, so this is the Comics Historian interview from 2001 with John Buscema.
Did your parents encourage you?
My mother did. My father thought I was wasting my time. I should have learned a trade, not a profession, a trade.
What do you want you to do?
Anything to earn a buck.
Well, at least you learned that lesson, didn't you?
Yeah. No, I never listened to him. I listened to my mother.
What kind of training did you have? Did you go to any?
I went to the High School of Music and Art, where they developed your appreciation of art. They took it in museums.
It's kind of weird. I forgot to say this before, but it's kind of weird that a high school like that existed back in the 40s.
And they gave you a canvas or watercolor paper, and you painted. You know, they put up a still life in front of you, and you copied it. And after high school, well, while I was going to high school, I went to Pratt at night for a couple of hours a week, and I had design and figure drawing. Then I went to the Brooklyn Museum. They had a Saturday morning class for a couple of hours each week, and I learned some figure drawing there. And that was about the extent. Most of my training was right on the job.
Were there any guys in your class that ended up in the same business as you?
Well, that's how I ended up. I had a friend of mine who was in comics, and he would give me addresses to apply for work, and I'd bring samples, and no one would accept them.
So it's kind of like how it is nowadays, where it's like you help get your friends hired, but back then they had more of a merit-based system.
So how'd you get accepted?
I saw an ad one day in the New York Times. They were looking for a comic book artist, and it was timely. And I went up there, showed him my samples. Stan was impressed, apparently, and he gave me a staff job.
And how'd you like being on staff?
I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. We were kids. I was a kid. Gene Colan was a kid. Most of the guys were much older than me, us. And it was a nice experience. I worked on staff for about a year and a half, and then they disbanded. There was no staff work anymore. It was just freelance.
Did you have any influences from any of the people you work with in terms of?
Not the people I worked with, no. But I was influenced by the syndicated strips, the Prince Valiants, the Tarzans, the Flash Gordons, and all that. I love that stuff. And illustrators. the illustrators from the Saturday Evening Post and Collier's, which don't exist anymore. Do they exist? I don't know.
Collier's doesn't. I think Saturday Evening Post does.
Yeah, they come out once a month.
Fawcett isn't working for me.
No, he's dead. Died a long time ago.
When was this you started?
I'd say I would like those syndicated papers to come back, but nowadays, who reads the newspapers anymore? Because the Prince Valiant artwork does look absolutely gorgeous. And I even have a small collection of Prince Valiant books that I inherited from my Nana because she got a couple omnibuses for her birthday one year. Pop-Up was a little miffed that she never read them, but I inherited them from her.
In the late 40s?
What, comics?
Yeah.
48.
48. Could you tell at that point that the illustration business was not doing...
No, that was the height of the illustration at that time. 48. Whew, wow, that's when I started clipping the magazines, and I clipped them years before. I have a collection at home. It's a tremendous collection.
Did you do all various genres for Timely when you started?
Yeah, I did westerns, romance, crime. Crime was very popular. Crime Does Not Pay, the most popular comic at that period. We did everything. Superheroes. Superheroes weren't that popular. They were dying out at that time.
Crime and detective books were doing.
Yeah, right.
And how'd you...
Then the CCA came in and wrecked everybody's shit. I will maintain this position, but I get why they had to get put in the CCA, but man, did it wreck the comic industry and change it so much.
How'd you like working on romance books?
I didn't mind. I couldn't draw girls in those days. It took me a while to learn.
So it was good. At least you learned how to draw girls.
Well, nobody taught me. I struggled. And how did I learn how to draw a girl's head? I started off with a baby's head and just enlarged certain areas, and I got a pretty girl.
That does explain it. Looking at some of his earlier pictures of a woman, doesn't exactly look like a woman. Looks like a Barbie doll. But I've heard of other artists have that same problem. Back in my Weeaboo days, I used to be really into Hitalia, and people used to bitch that there weren't so many female characters in Hitalia, and the artist flat out admitted, well, that's because I'm not as good as drawing women as I am men. That's why there's more men in this series.
So they all had high eyes, or low eyes.
No, they had high foreheads and pug nose, small chin. Before that, they looked like men.
Skinny men.
I would make them. I would draw a baby and age it, and it looked like a pretty girl.
And were you doing any art instruction while you were there?
Do you mean
At Timely?
did I go to school or anything? No. Like I said, I went to a life class at Brooklyn Museum once a week, and that was about it.
Did you socialize with any guys, even outside Timely, the guys that you worked with that you got along with?
Well, I socialized. Well, yeah, I had. We had a group of friends from the neighborhood I grew up with. We were about 6 or 7 guys. I don't remember. And a couple of us were in the art field, advertising, comics. And I socialized with a couple of guys from Marvel.
Ramita?
No, Ramita, I never met until I started working in '66. It was Danny DiCarlo and a couple of other guys, Rudy LePic, I don't know if you...
He looks like such a little baby. Such a little baby boy.
We would go out on the weekends,
Did you guys have a softball team?
They had it, but I never played. They never invited me.
Oh.
You didn't volunteer much, huh?
No, I lived, I didn't care to get involved with their social activities or whatever, especially once I moved to the island. It took me 2 hours to get into the city, and I killed a whole day just going into it. In fact, once I started working back in '66 with Marvel again, I really went into the city, really. I would work at home, and maybe a half dozen times a year I would go into the city to see.
That's how I feel about living near Columbus. It's like I'm not in Columbus, but I rarely ever go into the downtown area, and in fact I'd rather avoid it more than anything, because downtown is just such a miserable mess when it comes to driving and parking. And especially during rush hour where people are trying to figure out what the hell they're supposed to be doing with their frickin' gas pedal and brakes.
They stand, let them know that I was still alive.
Out of the stuff that you did any of it force you to expand your own personal repertoire in terms of your drawing? Like the romance books, obviously, you had to learn how to draw women over a period of time. Is there anything else that made you draw? Superheroes, you get a chance to draw basic figures. The Westerns give you a chance to draw animals and that kind of stuff?
Well, in fact, I still do it. I draw all the time. I draw 7 days a week. And whenever I have a day I'm working on whatever I'm doing, strip or the book or whatever, at the end of the day, I will continue drawing, doing what I want. Now, one of the things that I'm well known for is the back of the pages that I've worked on, and I've filled up many pages that way. And that's where I learned a lot, because I had no restrictions. I was doing what I wanted to do. And then I would apply it to the stories, the drawings, the positions, the figures, whatever they would do.
I get the feeling that he and I would not get along on an artistic basis because I'm such a control freak with my writing, and he would just get so frustrated with me.
And the thing is that I'm a constantly drawer. When I get up, I'm usually up around 5:30 in the morning. I have breakfast. First thing I do is start drawing. I'll draw maybe for an hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe 3 hours, depending on how I feel. And then, but it's got to be every day, every day.
When you do a comic book page, how do you determine layout in terms of shape of size and how the story?
Well, you have a determined size. All right, it's 10 by 15. You know you're going to work that. And depending on the scene. In other words, if I was doing a Conan shot and there was a battle scene, I knew automatically it would be a panoramic scene, so I'd go right across the page. If it's an individual, for example, a very important person, maybe the king, introducing the king, I would take up maybe a quarter of the page to introduce this guy sitting on a throne looking down at the subject. For example, when I did Mephisto, I introduced him. And one of the panels, I think he took an entire page sitting on his throne looking down at his minions, the characters that worked for him.
Now, did you learn basically on your own through experience how to do pacing for panels and how to do dramatic effects, or did you learn from other guys?
I learned from one guy specifically. I think I learned from everyone, but one guy specifically was Jack Kirby. When I first went back to Marvel, the first book they gave me, it was a disaster, but I didn't realize it at the time because I'd just come out of advertising. And it's a different ball game. And Stan pulled me aside. He said, "John, look at these books." And he gave me a stack of Jack Kirby books, and it was a revelation to me. And from that moment on, my work started to improve, and I had a different outlook on how to present the layouts, the stories, the storytelling, and all that.
I also like his humility of being able to be like, yeah, my work kind of sucked, and I had to rely on other artists to figure out how I am supposed to approach this. So I do like that he has that humility to admit that.
And right up till today, I still have those books, and I occasionally will glance at them if I find myself up to, hitting a wall. And in my book, the guy was close to a genius. I learned a lot. I've learned from other guys too. Anybody that works in the field, and I've learned from the guys who are bad what not to do.
I've made that point before when it comes to writing and reading. And Alan Moore, there was that Alan Moore clip that I had a long, long time ago on the stream where Alan Moore was talking about the importance of reading bad books and crappy books. And for me, at least, you read the bad stuff along with the good stuff, because if you only read the good stuff, you're not going to really know what bad looks like, or what wrong looks like, or even what just like a hot mess will look like, because there are some stuff where it's like I would describe it as a hot mess, where it's like there's some really, really good stuff in there, but holy crap did they crap the bed. And the way for you to be able to dictate what good and bad looks like is by reading bad books or looking at bad art. That is how you are able to determine what bad is supposed to look like, so you have more of a perspective on what good is supposed to look like. And I've said this before, you listen to some fans, especially in the anime community, where they will just nitpick at a series that's otherwise fine. Maybe not the fantastic, but it's fine. And I'm just sitting here and it's like, none of you have watched a shitty 80s OVA before, and it shows. Like, I have seen some shitty anime in my days, and it does put into perspective what good, bad, and okay anime looks like. And the same with comic books. Like, I have read some comic books where it's like, holy shit, what the hell were you thinking? Or what were you even trying to accomplish? But in the process of reading those shitty books, it did make me appreciate other books that maybe they weren't fantastic, or I didn't like them at first at the time, but it does give you the perspective, okay, this is actually an okay book. It's either not my thing, or I just couldn't see it yet.
It's amazing how fast Jack was, too.
Oh, the guy was a genius, absolutely. He revolutionized the way we do comics, and my book.
When did you meet Kirby?
I met him, I think, once or twice up at Marvel. Our paths crossed.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Yeah, because it seems like it seems like a repeat of that one interview we did. Let's go. We'll do one more question of this, and then we'll shut the stream down. I don't want to do the whole interview because I don't want YouTube handing me my ass with copyright again.
He worked at home, I worked at home. And I think I saw him once at the convention here in California, at the Icon.
What do you think of his influence in the overall Marvel?
Oh, he changed the entire, I mean, he was it, Jack Kirby. We were all influenced by Jack. I know I was, tremendously.
And you think it was based on the fact that his knowledge of panel layout and storytelling?
Everything. Design, layouts, action of the figures, the expressions, everything about comics. He was a master. And he, again, I repeat over and over, he revolutionized, for me anyway.
The one thing
It wasn't just you, Mr. Buscema. It was not just you. But yeah, overall, Buscema, fantastic, fascinating guy. I mean, my God, did he have a gigantic body of work. And I feel like he's a guy that if he were alive today, I would love to sit down and chat with. But I think we're going to call it for today. I will, I said with the other interviews, I'll put the comics historian interview in the link down below as a link so you can go watch the rest of it if you want to. Just, again, didn't want to get hit by copyright, and I didn't want to go over 2 hours, so thank you for watching. If you liked the stream, please give a like and comment, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!